Joined now live on the phone by Health Minister David Clark. Minister, thanks for joining us. I know we don't have terribly long, so let's look forward rather than back, because we all know what a disaster this has been. What is going to be done about it?
Well, John, it has highlighted a major infrastructure deficit in the country, but the important thing to note is that all New Zealanders are drinking the same water today as they were yesterday. So we don't want a panicked response. While water has been revealed to be not demonstrably safe in some cases, the majority of New Zealanders have water that meets the current standards. So I'm moving to make sure that I can respond to the recommendations and work out which ones we can respond to in short order and which ones will take a longer time to address.
Minister, whether or not it responds, whether or not the water meets the standards is almost meaningless if you read the report. And I'm not having a go at you here, you've been the Minister for a month. But if I read the report, the current regulatory regime governing drinking water is not being effectively administered, and statutory obligations applying to water suppliers are not being properly enforced. So in fact, the standards mean jack.
Yeah, well, what has been revealed by the report is that not a single compliance notice has been issued since the drinking water standards were updated in 2007. They were world-leading in 2007. I think we need to note that. And there was a period of grace for councils and suppliers to make sure that the water was safe. The previous government extended that period of grace, and even when that ended, they didn't issue a single compliance notice. So it's hard to understand why people would take it seriously.
I couldn't agree more. This defies understanding, but doesn't it also contain the solution? You don't have to have endless committee meetings. You don't have to write cabinet reports. Surely you just enforce the standards, don't you? They're there and they're good. It's just no one's been enforcing them.
Yeah, the standards are not what they are overseas. So I think in the medium longer term, we need to look at whether they're adequate. But the ones that are currently not meeting standard are, of course, the ones that are of the biggest concern. Now, it's important to say, John, that they're not demonstrably safe. That's not the same as not safe. So, I grew up on tank water myself, and that doesn't mean that today we don't have higher expectations of what safe drinking water
No,
should
but
be
let's
like.
look at the
and
figures.
Overseas jurisdictions have moved that way.
In addition to mass outbreaks, between 18,000 and 100,000 sundry cases of sporadic waterborne illness occur each year.
Yeah, and I think that won't be acceptable to New Zealanders.
Right,
This
absolutely
raises
not.
Serious issues and requires a serious response.
It requires more than 3.5 people at the Ministry of Health. There are 3 times more people in the comms team than there are in the drinking water team. The drinking water team is under-resourced and structured ineffectively. Really, this is absurd.
Yeah, the report is very critical of the Ministry of Health's response. There's no pretending otherwise. It's one of the reasons, I guess, why I moved to appoint a ministerial advisory group that I announced yesterday. I have had concerns myself about the leadership of the previous government, of the ministry, and concerns have been raised by the sector to me as the new minister.
That's why Chai Chu has gone, isn't it? In fact, I spoke to a good source today who said this report was the final nail in Chai Chu's career at the ministry. This was why he had to go.
Well, John, ultimately the State Services Commissioner is responsible for Mr. Chua's employment. I can set expectations, and I've set high expectations. Mr. Chua himself said he thought it was time for fresh ideas and new leadership. I agree with him. Okay.
So let's come back to what's going to be done. The Nats are saying they're going to support you, which is fantastic because it means you're not going to muck around in Parliament, are you? What do you think are the most meaningful things you can do quickly?
Well, there are meaningful things. I would like to understand how quickly we can issue compliance notices to major councils which ought to be able to comply with the drinking water standards. That is something I think that the ministry ought to be able to do almost immediately. If there's a reason why not, I want to be finding out pretty quickly. Some of the issues the very small suppliers will have significant cost attached, and that's a separate thing. But where there are bigger suppliers, I think we would all want public safety to be the first thing, the first priority. I think most New Zealanders want to be assured that their drinking water is safe, and it should be demonstrably safe.
Surely we just want it to be meaningful, don't we? There's an extraordinary exchange between the Mayor of Tasman, Mr Kempthorne, and the Associate Minister for Health, Joe Goodhue, in which Mr Kempthorne seems to be told that all he has to do is include a reference to water safety improvements in his long-term plan, and that will be considered to meet all practicable steps. I mean, as I said to somebody in an interview we're going to run later in the program, the piss was being taken here, wasn't it?
The response has been inadequate. I don't think anyone who reads this report will think that the response up till now has been adequate to the concerns raised in the report. And after stage one of the report was released, it should have been evident to councils around the country that they needed to do better, those that don't provide demonstrably safe water. Now, I note that in recent days, in my area, the Otago Daily Times had a front page today indicating that the Dunedin City Council has taken the choice to issue town supply water to Mosgiel, which is a significant township, because it doesn't consider that the risks associated with bore water in Mosgiel can be borne long-term. Good on them. So some of the councils are beginning to respond.
Yeah, absolutely, but lots of them don't have the money to do so. I know we've got very little time because you've got to be elsewhere, but two questions. One, infrastructure. A lot of it is ageing and populations are growing and councils don't have the money for it. And two, are other people going to go as a result of this report?
Well, firstly, the councils have been responsible for the supply of drinking water for decades, if not 100 years in this country, and they will be responsible in the future. But there's no doubt some of those smaller councils will struggle. We will need to have serious conversations about how necessary infrastructure changes will be funded.
And the word urgent is used 40 times in this report.
The word urgent is used a lot in the report, and we want to move swiftly. There's no question about that. This is a serious report that raises serious questions, although most New Zealanders on a day-to-day basis will be unaffected by it. The fact that 20% of our drinking water is currently not demonstrably safe, I think will concern a lot.
Okay, is anyone else going to resign, and did you or Peter Hughes sack Chai Chua?
Mr Chua made his own decision to resign. I think it was the right thing to do in the circumstances. There is a critical report that was released today as well, the performance framework report, which, in line with previous reports, showed a ministry which was really struggling. I've made my response, which is to appoint a group of senior health sector leaders to give me assurance that the ministry and the sector is on track to deliver affordable access to quality healthcare, but that goes to things like the quality of our drinking water too.
David Clark, Health Minister, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time.